This is just an older bunch of guys that for some reason have this bitterness toward today's generation of bodybuilders.
I don't think there's nearly as much wrong with modern day bodybuilding that some of these guys think there are.
But nobody disagrees with this guy. And I hate to say it, but Matt looks like a yes man when he's like, oh yeah, I fully agree. I mean, that's the easiest way to get somebody to come on your show.
Let's say for a minute that they did decide to make the Olympia an invitation only to those who have won a pro show. Who is going to make the decision on who gets to show up and who gets to stay home?
Because Cormier's got to get his IQ checked. Ridiculous.
Okay, we're on. John, what's going on?
How you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
This is really going to be a hot topic, I think. This whole thing going on with Chris Cormier, Lee Haney. Okay, let me give you a little bit of a background. I was tagged on a post on Instagram by Matt over at Muscle Discord. Both of us have been on Matt's channel, and no, actually, I haven't been on Matt's channel. He came on mine a couple times.
Yeah,
but
he came on mine once. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. Doing a good job over there, I like a lot of Matt's content. Recently had on both Chris Cormier and 8-time Mr. Olympia Lee Haney. Yeah. Both of them on for an interview. And the discussion really turned into comments made by Lee Haney about how the sport of bodybuilding is really losing its way and there should be some sort of reversion back to the good old days, quote unquote. Going as far as even saying, I saw that he actually said in regard to Keon Pearson, why would Keon want to put on 20 pounds and turn into a quote unquote orc? Yeah. So Lee Haney has a real problem with modern day bodybuilding, the industry, the pro cards that are out there, the Olympia competition. He has a problem with the physiques when it comes right down to it. So this is part of what we're going to be discussing. Chris Cormier also making the suggestion of the Olympia becoming an invitation-only show, which I cannot even begin to outline the ridiculousness of that suggestion. But we're certainly going to try.
Yeah.
We're going to start with the clip that Matt put on his Instagram. We'll listen to that, and then we're going to get into it.
Maybe we could start doing an invitational for the Mr. Olympia. Maybe
I think that
not
makes sense.
just you. Maybe you invited. Maybe you're qualified for Olympia, but are you invited to Olympia? Are you the top of the cream of the crop?
Yeah, I think the stage is for the cream of the crop. That's where it was during our era. You were top 12, top 15, and the rest, just like at the amateur shows, they don't let everybody come out and pose,
Exactly.
because we talking Mr. Olympia, you talking Mr. Olympia. You either got to pee or get off the pot.
Exactly.
There's a lot of people that that's got pro cards shouldn't have pro cards.
Yeah. So you can see how there could be some qualified competitors that maybe should still need.
Yeah. Okay. John,
where do you want me to start on that? Because there's so many things to fucking start on. It's ridiculous.
Where I want you to start is with the comments from Lee Haney. Okay. Where I want you to start is with the question of just at its face value. Are there too many pro cards out there?
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the cream doesn't rise to the top every time. It doesn't. Okay. You give me a pro card. Okay. I can go to the Masters, Team Universe, the Masters Nationals. I can get a pro card. I could enter a pro show and I won't break the top 10. So what's the difference? Because the best are always going to rise to the top anyway. That's it. And their argument, there's too many pro cards. Okay, I agree. But the best is going to rise to the top, and they're not going to stop giving out pro cards because that is a huge way to make revenue. So, wish in one hand and shit in the other and see what happens first.
See, for me, the thing of it is, when it comes to the number of pro cards that are out there, I don't necessarily have a problem with the number of pro cards that are out there when it comes to the industry. Now, when it comes to competition, I think that the number of pro cards that are out there now does have an effect on the biggest competition in bodybuilding being the Olympia. But when it comes to the number of pro cards, I don't think it should be reduced. I don't think they should necessarily hand out any more.
Mhm.
But I do think that the industry does benefit from, as much as people say it's a terrible thing, everybody's got IFBB Pro on their Instagram. Well, look, the fact of the matter is that this is part of the exposure for the industry, okay? Athletes that have IFBB Pro cards can make more revenue because they can get more sponsors and therefore they can inject more cash into the sport of bodybuilding. All these companies that they're sponsored by, not all of them, but a good majority, are the ones that have booths at all of these shows, including the Olympia. You know,
Right.
that could translate over into more prize money, which we have been seeing recently because of the growth of the industry. Okay. The number of pro cards, I think, arguably could be, well, it could be a direct. Could be a direct result because of the number of pro cards the industry actually growing. You know, it's a possibility.
Right. No, absolutely. And it is a way for them to make, especially if they're personal trainers or if they want to be contest prep coaches, that says IFBB Pro. It's like, it's kind of like, your NASM certification you can put up with it next to it. I don't care if there's too many pro cards out there. Do I think there's too many pro cards? Yeah, but it doesn't bother me because, like I said, the best is going to rise to the top regardless. It's just the way it's going to work. And the IFBB knows that. So it's not going to water down the sport. This is just an older bunch of guys that for some reason have this bitterness toward today's generation of bodybuilders. Now, if these guys would applaud or praise sometimes, then it wouldn't be so bad. But we're talking every time they're interviewed, every time they talk, they're shitting on the new generation. I mean, you could probably say to Lee Haney, give me one positive about today's bodybuilding world, and he probably wouldn't be able to answer it. Because he truly thinks that, 1985 was the pinnacle of bodybuilding when he was Mr. Olympia. And to not notice that bodybuilding is now globalized, that bodybuilding now is more influential, that bodybuilding now makes more money, that bodybuilders are getting bigger and freakier, which I think is a good thing. They don't, but I do. To not realize how social media affects it on a worldwide basis, how the expos have grown. To not realize that, to not say that, and not realize that's a good thing, then you're just blind and you don't want to see it.
Look, John, take bodybuilding out of it altogether. What industry has not changed from
Yeah.
1985?
Yeah.
Name
Yeah.
any industry.
Yeah.
All of them have changed. And wholly because of the internet. Social media is here to stay. And it has changed things for not just bodybuilding, but for everything, everywhere. It's happened. This is just a result of that phenomenon, as far as I'm concerned. And
Right.
it is growing. It is growing. That's one thing that I think Lee Haney may agree with. I should hope that he would agree with the fact that, yes, the sport is growing, regardless of the direction that you think it is growing in, being positive or negative. There's definitely more opportunity for athletes now than there was when Lee Haney was back in his heyday.
No question about it. I mean, look.
So why is there a problem then?
Because it's always Matt from Muscle Discord sent me a video of I don't know what basketball player from the early 2000s saying that today's basketball players suck, and he's like, "See, it's in every sport, which it is, but it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean shitting on the next generation and everybody doing it means it's right." And nobody. Here's what the real problem is with the older generation. All right, they're like the hot girl in the room. When they come someplace, nobody wants to upset them. Everybody wants them at their gym, on their podcast. Everybody's going to be a yes man. Everybody's going to agree with their opinions because they're the legend of the sport. And to a degree, they deserve it. But it doesn't mean somebody like myself or yourself can't come out and say, sorry, 8-time Mr. Olympia, you're wrong about that. He's got the right to say what he wants, and I have the right to say I completely disagree. But nobody does that to these guys. And if you look at some of these guys' past, now Lee Haney has a very good past. He was a family man, he was Christian, so on and so forth. But what has he done for the sport in the last 20, 25 years? Like, really, he has been irrelevant for the last 20, 25 years. And then all of a sudden last week, he comes on and he starts shitting on today's bodybuilders. He literally, I mean, nobody, guys like us know who he is, the hardcore bodybuilding fan. He deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of bodybuilding. I have him third of all-time greatest bodybuilders.
Absolutely.
Right?
And look, all the respect in the world to Lee Haney and Chris for that matter,
Well,
in terms of their
well,
careers, man, that's not
yeah,
even in question, all the respect in the world. Great bodybuilders, fantastic careers, I'm a big
yeah.
fan of both of them.
No,
Except for
I'm
Chris
not.
when he used to do that belly dancing thing at the Olympia in
Yeah,
19.
yeah,
Wasn't a fan. But regardless of that, guys were great.
yeah. I mean, listen, you can't take away their accolades. There's no question about it. But
That's
nobody
right.
disagree. But nobody disagrees with this guy. And I hate to say it, but Matt looks like a yes man when he's like, oh yeah, I fully agree. I mean, that's the easiest way to get somebody to come on your show. Look, there's a way. Look, when people come on my show, I give them all the respect in the world and I let them speak. Right? Mine's different. My show's different from Matt's. My show's different from everybody's. We laugh, we joke, we break balls, and we talk bodybuilding. But if we have a serious discussion, there's something I don't agree with, I'm gonna say it. But there's a way to say it nicely to a person of status like a guy like Lee Haney or a Dorian or on down the list. You know, uh, we were talking about 2 weeks ago. It was me, Almana DB, Xavier from Desktop, and Lee Priest on my show. And like I said, I treat them all with respect. They all have. I don't interrupt when they're talking. They can go and say what they want. And they were talking about how when they picture a Mr. Olympia, that they don't picture a Mr. Olympia to look like Derek Lunsford. They picture a Mr. Olympia to look like the freakiest, biggest, and they named Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney and and Dorian. And then I said, you're comparing him to the most dominant Mr. Olympias ever. Compare him to give him a fair comparison, and now compare him to somebody who won one Mr. Olympia like he did. Brandon Curry, who's the Lebanese lion? I keep forgetting his name. What's his name? Samir Banu.
Samir Banu,
Banu.
yes.
Who was the gay guy? He was Mr. Olympia. I forgot his name. During the
Who?
early 80s. There was a openly gay bodybuilder who was Mr. Olympia. I forgot his name. In the early 80s, he won Mr. Olympia once. I forget his name. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it does. I forget his name. People will put it in the comments. Compare him to them, and then it's, these are things that they never thought of before, and I hate the comparison to what about Ronnie Coleman? He's not compared to Ronnie Coleman. Nobody is comparable to Ronnie Coleman.
No.
Nobody. And I can't say this enough. Ronnie Coleman is a once in a lifetime bodybuilder you're never going to see again. Just like you're never going to see a Babe Ruth again. You're never going to see Muhammad Ali again. You're never going to see a Michael Jordan again. He's that guy for bodybuilding.
Yeah. So these are the things that you brought up during the conversation in terms of you don't necessarily agree with whoever it might be on your show.
Right.
Yeah, I got you.
But I'm not going to disrespect them.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But I will have a conversation and I will say something diplomatically, and I will be respectful, but it doesn't mean I can't disagree with them. Where you get these guys like, Lee Haney or, Ronnie Coleman or Dorian, and they sit there with RX Muscle, and I love RX Muscle. They sit there with Matt from Muscle Discord, and they just let them talk, and that's fine. But they've never had anybody like myself, go on a rant like I did this week and say, you guys are wrong. It's literally like talking to the hot girl and then she storms off because nobody told her no ever in her life. I don't know.
So
All right. Where do we go from here?
No. I understand what you mean. I understand. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to Lee Haney's comments, it certainly could be perceived as just somebody that does not necessarily understand, or maybe not, maybe understand is the wrong word. I just don't think that Lee Haney, maybe it is the right word actually. Maybe he just doesn't understand how it works these days. Like this is it. And now you see, he would understand. He just doesn't like it. That's just
Yeah.
it. I'm sure he does understand. He just doesn't like it. It seems more a personal preference than what may be actually proper for the industry. I don't think there's nearly as much wrong with modern day bodybuilding that some of these guys think there are. Not just Lee Haney. There's a lot of guys that have that opinion. But regardless, being so vocal about it like Lee Haney, I mean, to say that if Keon Pearson put on 20 more pounds, he would look like an orc. There is not one single individual in bodybuilding that I have ever heard say anything but that Keon should go to the open. I haven't heard anybody say, no, Keon should stay in 212. Literally nobody.
Lee Haney also said, I only put on 11 pounds from 1985 to 1991. It's a different era. It's a different generation. These guys are bigger. They're rounder. They're coming fuller. They're harder. These guys are freaks. Okay. Lee Haney would be a men's classic physique guy today. All right. So a guy like Keon, first of all, Keon may be like, I don't think an artist could draw a better bodybuilder. Keon might be one of the greatest physique, if not the best physique I've ever seen in my life. Right.
Absolutely.
And all you had to do was lead with that. And then say, but I think it's a mistake if he puts on too much weight to go to the open. Right. But instead of actually propping these guys up and giving them their kudos, and giving them their just due, they just go, he's gonna look whatever, like an orc if he puts on too much weight. I mean, it's a different era. You didn't have to be 250, 270 pounds on stage like you do now to be in the top 5 or top 10 of Mr. Olympia, whatever the case may be.
Well, look, I actually think that 2025 is becoming more synergistic with that day of bodybuilding being in the mid 80s when it comes right down to it.
Yeah.
Look at what happened in the or early to mid 2000s, even leading into the late 2000s with the bubble gut era. The physiques were overblown. It was ridiculous. We have evolved since then. And I'm not talking because of classic physique. Okay. I'm not talking about that division. In pro bodybuilding, the first thing that people go for is that waistline. If you don't have it these days, you are specifically marked down. It is in the IFBB rule book that the midsection throws off the whole physique.
There's no question about it. And it was getting out of hand. It was getting out of hand. And the judges would mark you down, and then the athletes fixed it. So, the athletes can only be so much to blame if the judges aren't fixing whatever they think the problem is.
The athletes fixed it, so the industry changed again.
Exactly.
I mean, for the better.
I remember do you remember when Rolly Winkler? I think Rolly was at the Arnold USA a few years back, and he had a bad bubble gut, and then they told him that they marked him down for it, that it was really bad, and then he went to the Arnold Australia, and I think he won because the gut was gone. It was Arnold Australia or Arnold Brazil, I don't remember. And he completely fixed it. He used to wear the waistband and do all these crazy maneuvers to fix his waist. So if there is something that the judges and the industry and even the fans don't like, and that it will change, tell you they will adjust it. Now, obviously I'm leading into the front relax pose, where the guys are like, well, they don't do the front relax like I did. All right, so they did it different. They did it different. Is it going to really change anything? Okay, I used to do it the way these guys are talking about, where it's literally a relaxed pose. And when when Bob Chick said your thumb should be able to hit your thighs, my coach, when I was competing in the NPC, told me the same thing. And I used to do it like that. But all right, so they don't do it like that anymore. And the judges aren't telling them not to do it like that. Would it really change the outcome of a decision if they didn't do it like that? Like if Nick Walker did the front relax like they did in the 90s, would they have given him the Pittsburgh Pro instead? You know, I mean, it really looks like they're just nitpicking and finding the finest thing, and then they're blowing it up on Instagram, and guys like Matt and other YouTube channels, and Lee Priest chiming in on it and so on and so forth. It is something that is so minute and so just so small, but they want to make it a big deal, and I don't get it. I feel like there's this bitterness, and I think part of it is because they make so much more money than these guys did with the prize money, and they should be happy that the new guys are making a lot more money. They should be happy that Arnold's giving away $500,000, or next year 700,000. They should be happy that bodybuilding has gone this far. Instead, you hear Haney goes, "Oh, Mr. Olympia was only 50,000." When I was competing, number one, 50,000 in 1985 was a ton of money, and you should be happy for these guys. Lee Haney, Dorian, and on down the list basically paved the way, and these new guys are taking advantage of that, and they're expanding the sport even more. And I don't understand the animosity or the bitterness.
It's not something that I understand either. I still find myself asking questions as to what is wrong with this modern day era of bodybuilding. There's no bubble guts. Maybe you could argue there's too many competitors at the Olympia. In fact, I would agree that there's too many competitors at the Olympia. I would also agree maybe, nah, you know what? I don't think there's too many pro shows. Have all the pro shows you want. That's money. That's money. So again, and it shows growth of the sport. So again, what is wrong? What is so wrong? Like it's a personal preference, as far as I can tell, is what they really see wrong with the industry. Personal preference of not liking the physiques in comparison to, you're right, their era, which you cannot do fairly. Mark's Max Muscle does it for fun,
Right,
he does it for fun, right?
Yeah, that's different. Right, that's different.
Yeah, it is different. Chris Cormier saying that the Olympia should be an invitational as a potential solution to too many pro cards and the sport being watered down.
It's ridiculous.
Go ahead.
That's an absolutely
John.
ridiculous idea. Do you get invited to the World Series? Do you get invited to the NBA championships? Do you get invited to the Super Bowl?
No, you play,
you have to
and
make
you
it
win.
there. Right.
Yeah, you play and you win.
Right. And every year there are different teams that make it there. And every year there's a different crop of guys, with the exception of, the top 5 or whatever the case may be, that make it there. And that's what makes the Olympia the Olympia. The idea that you have to win a pro show to make it there puts the Olympia at the top of the pile. And one of those shows that you can win to get there is the Arnold Classic. So I don't care if Arnold gives $2 million away for first place. It's never going to have the clout of the Olympia because of the way it's set up. It's set up so that the Olympia is the cream of the crop, the top of the pile. You have to qualify. You have to win a pro show, period. And I don't think there's too many competitors. I think there's more pro shows, which I think is great. I think I think it is globalized, and I like the idea that if you win a pro show, that you qualify. I think it should be that in every class in the Olympia. I think it is though, right? I'm not 100% sure, but and I don't have a problem with the top 3 guys, being qualified for the following year, and I certainly don't have a problem with winning Mr. Olympia and being qualified for life. But that qualifying aspect has to be there in order for the Olympia to be the elite contest to win, to be the best of the best. How else would you be the best of the best if you don't beat everybody who's won a pro show, right? It just doesn't. It's I don't know Chris Cormier. I never had a conversation with, well, I know of him. But that is a very, very stupid thing to say. It's just
Yeah.
that means you don't understand. That means you don't understand how it works. That means you don't understand how the Olympia works. That means you don't understand how sports work. You win. You don't get invited. Well, all right.
Well, see,
All right.
here's the thing.
All right. Let's say it's invite. Let's say it's invite only. Okay. Let's say it's invite only. And
well, he's saying even if you still have to win a pro show, but then you pick from the invitees from that list of people that have won pro shows, right?
that's what he said.
Yes. So he's saying that you may win a pro show, but you still may not be able to stand on the Olympia stage unless you are invited by the Olympia.
No, I disagree with that.
That's
Because
an
how you gonna-
absolutely ridiculous notion.
How are you
going to
rule out? How are you going to rule out bias? So here's what I mean by that. Okay, everybody wins a pro show, and now you got to fill out the paperwork of the guys that won and send it into Jim Mannion, whatever, so on and so forth. Right? How do you rule out bias? How do you rule out that Jim Mannion isn't picking somebody because that person has a huge social media presence and he knows he's going to get more eyes on the live stream, or that person is related to somebody? How do you rule out politics and bias if that's the case? With the Arnold, it doesn't matter because, like I said, the Arnold is set up so that if you win, you go to the Olympia. And the Arnold is more of a grander, huge, it's like more fun and upscale and grandiose, right? And they could pick who they want, and that's how it's set up. With the Olympia, no, I completely disagree because there's no way you could promise me how you could rule out bias.
You're absolutely right about that. The other question is when it comes to, let's say for a minute that they did decide to make the Olympia an invitation only to those who have won a pro show. Who is going to make the decision on who gets to show up and who gets to stay home? No, legitimately, who are the people that are going to make that call? Let's look at who is in the Olympia organization now. Okay, you've got Dan Solomon, you've got Jake Wood, right? They're at the top, so I would imagine they would be part of that conversation, right? My guess is that Steve Weinberger would be brought in to be part of that conversation, and probably Tyler Mannion would be who I would think would be logical of those who are at least in the face of bodybuilding and not in the background, But regardless, even if it's people that we don't even know that work for the Olympia behind the scenes, what makes these people qualified to make that decision? What are they basing it on?
That's another thing, yeah.
And further to your point, right? Further to your point, how do you remove the bias? It just adds more potential for political influence. What the qualification does for winning a pro show, in theory, I mean, we know that there's certain shows where certain decisions are made because of politics as well. But what we're talking about is removing, well, not even allowing that many avenues for political influence to be within bodybuilding because it already has, a bad reputation for political influence. So by adding one at the highest level, I think it would deteriorate the show. Competitors would be discouraged.
That's right. Why go in? Well, yeah.
You
absolutely.
cannot make the Olympia an invite-only show. Chris Cormier, I reposted it on my Instagram. Chris Cormier, if he had to deal with that back in the day, let's say that he would have been pissed. And I mean pissed,
He would have never got. Chris Cormier had a bad reputation, and not his attitude, but his actions. I'm 49 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm their generation. Okay. And when I was in my 20s and I was going to community college or, when I finished college or whatever the case may be, we would go out. I grew up in New York, so we would go out to the clubs in New York, and we'd go out to the clubs in New Jersey. And he was there. If it was back then, it wasn't the New York Pro, it was the Night of Champions. If the Night of Champions was in town, he was there with his whole squad, doing drugs, drinking, out all night, chasing girls. And I think I said this on my other channel, my other video I did. One time I was in a small club in New Jersey with my friends called Club Abyss, and he was there doing the same thing. He had a squad of 10 people, and from what I understand, his drug abuse really got out of control.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a sport that's filled with drugs. There's no getting around it, right?
No,
So
I'm
it
talking
does get
about
out of
no, I
control.
don't mean steroids. I'm talking about
I know you mean
recreational
recreational.
drugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
regardless. I mean, you're doing drugs, right? But
Right.
yeah, Chris's reputation for partying is pretty legendary from what I understand. Yeah. But the qualification round, suggestion, just in my opinion,
Ridiculous.
absolutely incorrect. It would not work. It would ruin the Olympia when the Olympia is already trying to really continue their establishment as being the number one bodybuilding competition. Never in my years as a fan of bodybuilding have I ever heard the conversation of the Olympia not being the number one show in the world without question. The last couple of seasons, we've been having that conversation. So the Olympia could not afford to do anything even remotely risky.
Right. They have to they have to stay that you have to qualify and you have to win a show to qualify. That is their go-to. They have no choice. That has to stay like that.
Yeah.
They
absolutely.
can't because if they change it, then the Arnold takes over because it's more grandiose. There's more money. It's Arnold. The expo is amazing. But
like I said, the Olympia is still not without their battles ahead of them to continue that presence as being number one.
Yeah,
absolutely. So you could not do you just could not do something that risky being at the head of the Olympia. Imagine Jake Wood coming down and saying it was going to be a qualifier. People would be livid. Fans, athletes, commentators. I don't think there's anybody that would say, yeah, this is a good idea.
You would just pick really all female
giving it that thought. Oh, God.
Now his reputation. He likes the big bitches. That's it. That would be the whole lineup.
That'd be the whole. Imagine. Yeah, you'd get a lot of pay-per-view views, right?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. But look, when it comes to the cut round at the Olympia, the elimination round, whatever you want to call it, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that whatsoever because that would further increase the experience for both the audience and the competitors, and I'm sure the organizers as well, of the Olympia. John, you don't like Classic to begin with. You're certainly not going to sit through 50 plus competitors on the live stream, or even if you're in the, you're not going to do it. And nobody does. Nobody does. Exactly. There are very hard, fast numbers that we can point to when it comes to the live streams that we do for the Olympia, where numbers are good, where numbers dip off.
That's right.
When people are tuning in, essentially.
That's right.
Right.
And it is open and classic. That's when they're tuning in.
Yeah.
That's
now
I don't think they should get rid of the other classes. That the other classes don't bother me, but they have to realize that those two classes, and they know already, those are the money makers. That's your bread and butter right there. Classic, physique, and the open.
Yep. So let them have their day. You qualified for the Olympia. You're going. But you may not make it to the finals to be able to step on stage with the top 16 in the world. That preserves that preserves the elite level of competitor that you want, right? That elite status. And you're not going to be, dude, the Olympia runs until like 3 a.m. here where I'm at. It's like 2 a.m. where you're at,
Yeah.
It's just too much.
Yeah, it's on the West Coast, so to begin with. So they're 3 hours behind me. So what are they, 4 hours behind you?
Yeah, it's just too long, and it's just too long of a show for it to go that far, So it would really help to have that elimination round. When it comes to the comments made by Lee Haney there, absolutely agree, and it's been discussed more and more, I think, in the last probably year or two of that happening. There's no discussion of it actually being implemented. Actually, I asked Bob Ciccarillo a few months if there was any movement on that after me and him did a pretty lengthy podcast on it. And he said it's not going to happen this year. So it doesn't seem like that conversation is going to continue.
Yeah.
But
the one good thing is it looks like guys like Steve Weinberger and Tyler Mannion and Jake Wood, they kind of don't pay too much attention to this crazy talk. You know, they know what works. You know, plus they're making way too much money, and they know it works. And you know, they get too many sponsors. These guys, you know, people want to compete. They want to be pros. They want to be on that stage. They know what they have. They know what they have is special.
Yeah. And they are at the forefront of the industry growing. Everybody is tied into the IFBB, you know?
Right.
Anybody that's in the industry, that's it. Whether you're
they're the only ones on the block. That's it.
That's right. And they
The
are
only guys hiring.
undeniably the best of the best. That's one thing that has never come into question. The number one bodybuilding league in the world is the IFBB Pro League by far.
Oh, it's not even the guys that you know, win in the other IFBB, you know,
The Elite Pro.
Yeah. You know, Crizo and who else?
Well, Andrew Jack started there. Nexzilla was there. Yeah.
Yeah. So all those guys just come over here, and then they get a taste of reality. Welcome to the NFL, rookie. That's what happens.
You know that Michael Crizo has actually won 5 international Arnold Classics.
Really?
5 of them overseas. Yep.
Really?
Yes.
Well, he's a good, you know, he's a good bodybuilder. There's no
in the Elite
about
Pro. In the Elite Pro.
He's a good. He's.
Right?
I'm not saying that he's not a good bodybuilder. I'm just saying that he's not going to be at the top of the heap in the IFBB. It's just not going to happen.
No, listen, he got his reality check when what did he take 12th at the first Olympia he did, I think, you know.
And that's amazing.
Oh, it is, of course.
I mean? Not to
amazing, detract
from
it.
He's just used to winning and blowing everybody out of the water. You know what I mean?
Look, yeah. And look, anybody that watches my channel knows that me personally, I'm a very big Michael Crizo fan. Very big Michael Crizo fan.
He has a great physique. He really does. It's just, you know, he's got to work on his posing. And
massively.
And as good as his symmetry is, when you put him up against, you know, guys like Tonio and, you know, Derek, you know, his symmetry isn't as good as theirs. It's the way it is.
No, and that's very heavily rewarded in modern day bodybuilding. It's mass with class at its most basic definition. It really is. That's what wins.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, that's what wins.
If that's the case, you know, then if it was a freak show, then Nexzilla would win everything, or Nick Walker would have been Mr. Olympia already, or whatever the case may be. But you know, it's like any people that think they understand bodybuilding. Sometimes they say things and I immediately go, you don't understand it. You don't get it. You don't get it. Like, or they're still stuck on 10 years ago. One of the comments I put when I had that small clip on Instagram and I put it on Facebook, one of the comments is, well, that's because these guys today all have bubble guts and varicose veins. And I'm like, all right, only one guy has varicose veins and nobody has bubble guts anymore. So what are you talking about? And I absolutely refuse to get into an Instagram debate or argument. You know, I just refuse. It's just stupid. It really is. You know.
Well, maybe you'll get into one in the comments section below.
Yeah, I don't do that either on my YouTube.
No, I know you don't. I know.
I let them argue with themselves. I just don't do that. You know, if somebody says something nice, I'll say something nice back or give them, you know, a thumbs up or whatever. You know, which is fine. Which 99% of them are nice comments. But every once in a while, you get some idiot that says something. And I don't delete anything either unless it's really bad. Like I could count on my hand how many times I've deleted a comment.
Oh yeah, me too. It's not
I don't delete unless
pretty much
like,
never.
Yeah. I unless it's something that is really, really, really bad that gets too personal, you know, something like that.
That's right.
You know?
That's right. That's a different story. No, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, final thoughts on this. Chris Cormier, invitation only for the Olympia.
Chris Cormier's got to get his IQ checked. It's ridiculous. It's stupid.
Understood. Lee Haney.
Lee Haney is a legend. I wish he would praise the IFBB more and what bodybuilding has become. I really wish he would, because he is a guy that everybody would respect and look up to. You know, I'm not saying you have to do like Jay Cutler and have his own podcast and so on and so forth, but at least praise the guys that are really, really putting the hard work and effort in there. Critiquing a physique is one thing. That's completely different. But I really wish he would just applaud these guys a little more. Or
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's
Yeah.
the modern day era of bodybuilding is not only not as bad as these guys think, but it's actually pretty damn good. If you look at all the eras throughout bodybuilding, we are
Absolutely.
in a very, very exciting time in bodybuilding. And part of that is because of the fact that the freak shows are out there, as well as the aesthetic mass monsters. And there has never been a time in bodybuilding when we've had balance, I think,
Yeah.
quite like this.
No, this is a high talent era of bodybuilding. You go back to 2020 and the talent was lower. Okay. You had, the best guys were Brandon Curry and Bonac. Phil Heath was out of the picture. Sean Roden had passed away. Dennis Wolf had that injury and he left.
Yeah,
So,
Hadi was still making his way up. Yep.
Adi was still making his way up. You had Ramy who could not get it together for some reason,
Yep.
and it was a lower time. It always goes like that. It's always bodybuilding always has this peak and valley. And I'll tell you another opinion that I've said on my show before that is very unpopular, and I will say it, and nobody will say it. When Jay Cutler was Mr. Olympia, it was at a very low point. The talent in bodybuilding was at a low point. You had all the guys from Ronnie's era were gone. Ronnie, Sean Ray, you Flex, Chris Cormier, all those Lee Priest, those guys were gone. And now Jay Cutler's best competition was Branch Warren, Victor Martinez, Dexter Jackson. He lost to Dexter once, and he should have lost to Victor that one time. So it is not a very popular opinion because he's so loved in the sport. And I'm a huge Jay Cutler fan. Don't get me wrong, but he
Sure,
did
yeah.
not. He did not dominate a dominant era like Ronnie did, or like Dorian did, or even like Lee Haney did. And there were times where he missed the mark, like when he lost to Dexter, or when he should have lost to Victor. You know.
I think that, and I think that the comparison for this era is that we see a lot of guys that are coming in on, and they're coming in quite streamlined. It's just how the physiques are, right now in this modern era. It really is very well balanced, in my opinion. I really think it is. I think that
Yeah.
mistakes were made, and I think that they were corrected, and this is the result. I think it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I know I did the video and I know I did it off the top of my head. And the one thing I got wrong apparently, because I was talking to Jason Owens, is the one thing I said was I said Dorian Yates was not a good ambassador to the sport. Right? They called him the shadow and he would win the Olympia and go home. But apparently that was the one thing I was wrong about that he did. He actually got paid very well to travel and go promote the sport and so on and so forth. Um, but everything else that I said, I stand by. Like, and that's the thing. If I have new evidence or somebody that was in that era, like Arns corrects me on it, I will say, okay, well, I was wrong, and I'll retract that. But everything else I stand by. Like Dorian and Chris Cormier laughing at the question that Matt had said about Derek Lunsford, I thought was extremely disrespectful. I mean, Derek Lunsford is former Mr. Olympia, Arnold Classic champ, has every possibility of winning Mr. Olympia again. And the question was, would Dorian worry about Derek Lunsford? And they both laughed at the question, Chris and Dorian. And Dorian was like, "Nah, I wouldn't think I would be doing much losing." And I that was extremely disrespectful to a guy like Derek, who is an excellent, one of the best in the world bodybuilders. And not only that, the shit that he has to take from social media, for some reason, Hottie's fans, when he beat Hottie, they literally thousands of death
Oh
threats and
yeah.
him and his family. Nick Walker fans just completely shit on him. And he still comes back and he still trains and he still wins. And that says something about the character of a person. you know. And again, we don't want to talk about that, right? We don't talk about that. We don't talk about the character of Derek Lunsford and what he goes through, because those guys never had to go through that. Those guys, those guys never had to open up their phone and see 500 messages because you beat their favorite bodybuilder that they're going to come and kill your family. They didn't have to go through that. As a matter of fact, those guys would go to a gym and face to face, everybody. First of all, they would let them in to train for free. Chris Cormier came to your gym in his prime. You let him train for free because he was Chris Cormier, and people wanted to come up and shake his hand. Nobody's going to do that face to face. So there's another element that they have to deal with that is completely disregarded and makes it even more difficult for them to do what they have to do to get in shape. I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that. I really don't. And I have pretty thick skin, but I don't know if I can handle an entire country of fans that want to kill me and my family.
Athletes actually are, look, there's companies out there that are dedicated to social media training for individuals that get this overnight following of, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, not overnight, but over a period of time. Once you get to a certain level, you need to be able to navigate that properly. So you seek out strategies, I'm sure that there's some supplement companies that say, hey, this is our guy you want to talk to, okay? And this is how you're going to deal with it. Without a doubt.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be actually,
doubt.
Yeah.
Nah, be very, very beneficial and helps these guys keep their sanity if they actually end up going for it, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's just all part of the modern era of things that bodybuilders have to deal with. And for the most part, I think when it comes to Derek Lunsford, I would say that if Derek was asked the same question, that he would probably be a lot more respectful.
Yeah. Because you always respect and love the guys from your past. From the guys you looked up to. When I posted that clip on Instagram, Samson Dowder posted it, and he said it's very disheartening when the guys that you looked up to are now, I forgot, I'm not saying verbatim, but now are disrespectful to the guys that are winning today. Those guys might have guys like Dorian, guys like Chris Cormier, guys like Lee Haney. Those guys might have motivated somebody like Samson to actually go into bodybuilding. I remember the first guy that I wanted to look like was Sean Ray. I opened up a fucking magazine. I was like, oh, that's why I want to work out. I want to look like that. Of course, it never happened, but that was
you're still a work in progress, John. Come on.
Yeah. It never happened. And I remember the picture. I remember he had his flat top. He had no shirt on, and he was leaning up against, I think, a Ferrari. I remember the picture like it was yesterday, and I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I was like, oh. Yeah, I'm gonna work out. I want to look like that, and of course, it's just, you're not gonna look like that. But at that, but that might have motivated guy. That might have happened to Derek, Samson, or maybe it wasn't a magazine, or maybe it was early YouTube that they were looking at, or early Facebook that they were looking at, and like, wow, yeah, that's what I want to do. And these guys don't take this into consideration. I don't think many people have like critical thinking skills. I think they have tunnel vision. They just fucking think one way, and they just can't bring in any other variables and plug it in and realize that, oh, okay, maybe this is what would happen, or maybe that would happen, or maybe I am saying something too harsh, or maybe I should praise them a little bit more, but no, it is what it is.
Nah, there's a balance in there, there's a balance between criticism and respect. And I think that the respect really should be there, like you're going to shit talk and like a little bit. Yeah. That's different. Shit talking is more of a humorous demeanor. It's not personal, I'm going to kick this guy's ass at the Olympia.
Yeah.
That's good.
Right. Shit talking is for the athletes to go back and forth and cause drama. But when you have look, you're too young to remember, but I remember when
we'll see.
Yeah, I remember when Arsenio Hall had Sugar Ray Leonard and Mike Tyson on.
I'm too young to remember.
Yeah, Mike Tyson was the heavyweight champion. Sugar Ray Leonard was the middleweight champion. Okay, and he had two of the greatest fighters that ever came on. And then, oh no, I'm sorry. He had Muhammad Ali on first. He had Muhammad Ali on first, and Arsenio Hall said to Muhammad Ali, "If you fought Mike Tyson today, would you be able to beat him?" And Muhammad Ali at that point had Parkinson's and he was punch drunk, and he went no, because he would hit me one punch and I would be out, you know. And then he brought out Mike Tyson at Sugar Ray Leonard, and then he asked Mike Tyson who would win, you or Muhammad Ali, and he said there comes a time where there has to be a king and every head must bow, and that's the king. Pointed to Muhammad Ali. That I don't understand why that is so difficult to be you know, in bodybuilding, that these guys can't do something like that. Do you know what I mean? Think about it, like if Derek Lunsford would say, "Yeah, I would have fucking beat Dorian. Yeah, I have no problem. I would have killed Dorian." You know, everybody and their mother would forget it. They would be freaking out. You know, but Dorian laughing at the question that would he be concerned? Nobody. I think I was the only one who spoke up about it.
I haven't seen anybody else speak about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
When I saw the clip, or I saw you comment on that clip, I went back and I watched it myself. And look, Dorian is one of the greatest of all time. You know, he's without a doubt one of the greatest of all time. But just like when you win an Olympia, you're expected these days to, you know, conduct yourself a certain way. I think that he could conduct himself maybe a little bit more respectfully when it comes to this day and age of bodybuilders. Again, this problem with this modern era of bodybuilding, I can't disagree with it anymore. You know, do I have a preference of, you know, back in the 90s myself? Absolutely I do, without question. But today is like I said before, it really is pretty damn good out there.
Yeah, it really is. The guy is no joke. I mean, did you see what Tony O'Burton looked like?
Oh,
I mean,
dude,
it was no contest.
All right, look, I'm gonna leave it right there. All right, John Livia, serious and silliness bodybuilding. I'll put the link in the description down below. John sells those T-shirts as well. You still gonna send me one?
Oh, that's right. Fuck yeah, I will. I'll get on it. All right.
Yeah, just don't charge me a 10% tariff. All right.
No, don't worry about it. Yeah. Bodybuilding channels don't do tariffs.
Perfect. All right. I'll leave
brother.
the link
Thanks
to,
a lot,
yeah, listen, John, I appreciate you coming on. I'll leave the link to your channel in the description below, and we'll get another one in soon.
Appreciate it, man. Love it. Thank you very much, brother.
Yeah, glad to have you. All right. That's going to do it for this episode of the Bodybuilding Breakdown. Catch you guys in the next one.